I don't know. I had a really good Valentine's Day, so I'm extra just like, I don't know. It helped to just kind of start out my Tuesday, I guess. But at MIWSAC, I'm the membership and outreach coordinator. So I'm working with different tribes around Minnesota, 11 tribes, and working with member programs, individual members, and just doing outreach and bringing awareness to sexual violence, sexual assault in Native communities, and just wanting to bring more awareness to, this issue and how we can get more comfortable having these conversations, sharing resources, all of that stuff. So I'm really excited to be here. I don't know, our last time together, I was off camera the whole time, but I was definitely shedding tears, and like, just, it was very powerful for me. And we talked as a staff about like, how do we do a debrief afterwards? And so we're, going to be staying on a little bit after we meet and after our time together, and talking about how, like, our impact and our time together. So I don't know, I'm happy to be here and I'm excited. So thank you all for bringing that positive energy and love into the space.
Thank you, Angelica. And who do you pass it to?
I pass it to Morgan.
We can't hear you, Morgan. Linda, do you want to go ahead while Morgan's working on her?
Sure. My name is Linda and I work for MIWSAC. I've been here about 6 years, and currently this morning I am in North for a long time. I don't keep track of it in years, but it's been a long time. I have children, I have other people's children who call me mom, and I have a lot of grandkids, and a lot of women and men that call me auntie. So it's pretty cold here. I was gifted this yesterday, and this is a really huge honor for me. And it's an Eagle fan, but my brother and the woman there had given me this, and it's from the program that I used to work at back in 1997 through 2008. It was a gift from that program. So tonight is ceremony. I'm really looking forward to that. It is an all-woman ceremony. So that is why I'm here, and I'm off for a couple of days, which I'm really grateful for. I have many things to do. I offer to do people's taxes for free. So I have a little line of people waiting for me to sit down and do that. And then I have sewing. I'm sewing skirts for my granddaughters, and I need to, I didn't ever take the time to do that stuff. I had other stuff going on. So everything in time, it'll be right on time. So thank you for joining us, Vivian. Welcome. I'm happy to see you. And I'm hoping that we have a sharing of souls and information and time, and it's a gift to be here. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for the welcome.
So thanks everyone for your introductions. And again, glad to see everyone. I want to just make sure we take a moment to breathe and just to be present today as best we can. We always know there's a lot of stuff going on in the background, wherever we are, but just trying to take some special time to be present and give our attention to our speakers this morning. Nana has been with us on, I think, all of the listening panels. And I want to start with Nana this morning. You can do your self-introduction and just share with us whatever you like. And for all others, if you would please take notes, jot your notes down. Your notes are valuable to us in terms of being able to pull together all of the information. This is not a one-sided affair where STWCS is, running the show and giving all the guidance and instruction. We're doing this together. So we want to make sure that everyone is taking notes and prepared to share whatever you want to share with us. And we'll pull all of that together. But Nana has been with us and is a valuable player on our team and a valuable player in the nation of leadership in the movement for domestic violence and sexual assault. So Nana, if you would share with us who you are and then just give us your wisdom, we are ready to hear from you.
All right, good morning, everybody. Y'all can hear me okay? Okay, great. So now I feel like, oh, I don't know what to say. You did. But as Amaya was saying, my name is Nana. My last name is Minima. I've been in the field of domestic and violence, sexual work since officially being paid, because you have that officially doing this as my job, right? Since 2010. But, most of us were doing something to help out people before this. My family, I come from a family where my dad and mom started their own nonprofit to help out in the African-American community with health and mental health. So when I was a teenager, I was doing stuff with HIV/AIDS prevention. I was on anti-smoking, stuff with American Heart Association, all that stuff, doing grassroots work before getting into this. So I had that boots on the ground doing health promotion in minority communities. And while I was in college, I started a chapter of the West Virginia Coalition for Minority Health in the North Central West Virginia. So I ran that while I was in grad school. But while I was in grad school working on my master's for public health, I was sexually assaulted. So I felt like that, for me, when that happened, I felt my life ended and that I was derailed my whole everything, because I just couldn't focus, couldn't do anything. I was a TA for a social psychology class, and 2 of my students had disclosed that they were also sexually assaulted, and I had never came and talked to anybody about it. So that was like double impact, but I was there to support them. I was like, whatever you need, take your time. But I didn't, I disclosed to a school, a counselor I was seeing, but I saw the value. I think I'm thankful for experience I've had, and it might sound weird because I've learned and grown from it, and that didn't diminish me. They thought that would take my power away, but I realized that you can't take my power. Like, I still have it. You try to deceive me that I was powerless and I couldn't do anything, but it was there all the while inside. And then just took some time. But my experience with that at the school system was like, hey, they need a lot of help. Like, they have their area expertise at the university, but then seeing for the need of community-based organizations and other players, like, I found out about that. So I was I was dismissed from my graduate program. I thought my career was over. And I was like, well, I'm not going to have anything. But just so happened, God, the universe allowed things to happen where I still was community minded to help out others. And I saw a position for a health education, like promotion. So I applied to be a prevention education coordinator at a dual organization in West Virginia. And at first they didn't hire me. And then a couple of months later, they said, hey, are you still interested in that job? So that's how I got my official start being paid to do this work. And I found so much joy in doing it and being of service to others. And from there, I didn't think that, where my journey would go, but I was just so thankful that I had the opportunity through meeting with other wonderful advocates in West Virginia. There's an awesome DV coalition there and a good sexual assault coalition. And through the DV coalition, I was able to have the opportunity to get connected with the Women of Color Network. That's how I met Samaya and Rebecca, going to the call to action, and then get plugged into a whole world of other awesome women of color advocates. And just then from there, I was able to participate in WOCN's leadership academies. And even though I never thought I would be where I'm at as an executive director of a dual organization, never thought about that. I thought I would start my own nonprofit like my parents, but this is the second time of being a director at a dual organization. When I moved here to Louisiana, where I'm currently at, it'll be 4 years that I've been here, director in May, but I just ask God, the universe, to guide me, and having that support from wonderful mentors, other advocates, and just all the while having an open heart and mind to listen, grow, and learn, and to be of service. I think that really has helped me and helped to support me in sustaining to do this work. Because I don't know about you all, like I bow and honor you all that have been here doing this work for however, long a time. Because sometimes doing this work, even if you have been here a short period of time, it could feel like dog years. Sometimes just doing this work. I don't know if y'all understand that. Especially in some of these rural communities. And sometimes when other people don't look like you or don't identify you, and you're trying to advocate on behalf of survivors and they don't seem like they have a listening ear, it just can sometimes wear you out. So I'm still here, still doing this work. I started my own consulting organization to help support new directors, because I know I needed the support, and I was so grateful for the support that I had. So doing some consulting on grant writing, but also that individual one-on-one support with women in nonprofit world. So I just am so happy to be here on this journey. I thank God every day. I try to infuse my work with not only just having a passion, but love. I was talking to my team earlier this morning about how I want us to have trust, respect, and love. Well, I said like trust, respect, and believe in each other. and also that we have more days of joy than not. I'm a firm believer in that. If there's something that I can do to make that happen, I want to be able to help support you or create space, right? I think to best effectively put an end to domestic and sexual violence, stalking, human trafficking, is that we have to be able to nurture ourselves, because we can't just do this alone, but we have to give to ourselves. And I've learned that because I'm about to be on the point of burnout of, if I don't give into myself, I can't give to others. And so, like I tell my team, take breaks often, do what you need to do. We have a chill room here in my office. If you need to take time, take the time. Nourish yourself so you can give to each other, to support the clients, and to have that sacred time. I tell them, like, you need to have that sacred time to yourself. Because if you're not good for yourself and your family and friends, you're not going to be good for doing this work. And I want you to be good, not only for our clients, but for you and your people. So that's something that I'm really, really big on, is like we have to take that time and to have a wellness minded perspective in this work. Because you can't keep on doing that if you're not paying attention and taking care of yourself so that you can help and support others. So sorry that took a little bit of a long time, but that's, I just wanted to share that to kind of give you a spectrum. It took me some time to learn that for myself, because I can just be go, go, go. I'm really thankful, like, to you, Samaya, too, because Samaya will be like, okay, she'll be talking about how she walked and took some breaks, naps, water. So those are all important to help sustain us and for me in the work, so that I can really live by my motto, which is love, live, and lead. If I don't have love out for myself, can't give it to anybody else. And if we're living, I need that love to help me to live and have a life where it's just not only giving, but to live fully. And then for leading, I feel like those two things are critical so that I can be an effective leader, like in my family, in my organization, and with others. So Samaya, what's the first thing you want me to talk about other than this?
In terms of your experience in working with Native women, what are some things that you have experienced? What would you like to share based on things you have read, like historically, and things that you would like to see in terms of accountability, ways in which they can support us around anti-Blackness, how to stop it, how to interrupt it, just those kind of things.
Okay, thank you. Well, I will say, to be honest, I've had limited experience working one-on-one with survivors who have identified and came out and saying that they are Native. My home state of West Virginia, if you all aren't familiar, it's on the East Coast, the eastern part, and there aren't any nationally recognized tribes in West Virginia. There's some that have tried to do it, but unfortunately haven't. And there are some state, very, very small portion of state recognized. And so in my work as a direct, doing direct services in West Virginia, I may come across some that have survivors that are Native but didn't identify, when in the course of me working with them. In Louisiana, now that I live here, there are, I will say that there's more diversity, period. In West Virginia, it was like 5% minorities, definitely a lot more diversity here. In Louisiana, we have a program that is that they're solely focused on serving Native identified individuals, and they are a part of the Domestic Violence Coalition. So I've had the opportunity to meet some of the advocates from there, and reached out to their director to ask them if they can come and do some training with my team on how to best support Native survivors. And in my service area, there isn't a recognized state tribe, but there are people here that identify in this region. But there are state recognized tribal lands in Louisiana. More of them that I know of are further south. I live near New Orleans. I'm like 45 minutes from New Orleans. I'm 45 minutes from Baton Rouge. But they're more south than where I'm at. But if we have, like, for example, if we provide services to survivors, I try to tell my team that we don't use just a cookie cutter, because I've heard this like throughout the work, and I'm sure you all have had, we treat all survivors the same. I can't stand that. To me, it's like you're stripping them of who they are and their identities. And Halika was saying that she has all these different identities, and that makes her her, right? So if you strip that and say, oh, we treat them all the same, it's like you're not seeing that person for who they are, right? And what are some of their unique needs, and listening to them. So it's not just like, okay, well, you identify as Native, so you'll need this and that, but it might help us to say, okay, here are some other services. If they would be interested in it, being open and to hear, and having that cultural sensitivity and humility in our work, which I think is needed. I also would like to say on the support, I guess I can go both ways, because what I'm needing is a Black identified woman from Native women is, I guess, a chance for you to hear what we need. And support would be that come with open ears and an open mind, even though it might not be your lived experience of some of the things that we're going through. Just be open and to hear what we're having to share, what we're having to say about our experience, not only in this movement, but our experience in life. And I would also say that we touched on this before, but the whole a oppression Olympics thing, where it's like, oh, I had it worse. I think that's counterproductive. It doesn't help any of us when we're stacking that up. So I ask, if you can, I'm not being disrespectful of your lived experiences or what your ancestors have gone through, but when we're sharing, if you could just hold on to that until we're done talking. Sorry to say that, but we're not going tit for tat who had it worse, because I think that we're doing this work with survivors. I say they're the experts at what they've experienced. They can only know. If we're talking about that with survivors, how can I know what your experience is, or you know my experience? Like, I believe and trust what you're saying is what your experience is, how you're feeling. So I want and expect that back. Right. Also, I would like, if you can help disrupt, we talked about this, I think earlier on, maybe before we had these panels, but being a disruptor. And I think that also goes, if you're doing essay work, we're doing some of that similarly. So if you can take some of those things of disrupting certain myths or certain things that are being perpetrated out there, like however you feel that is safe, because I know safety looks different for, different types of people. But when people are, perpetuating certain stereotypes or certain things, just to disrupt, like, hey, that's not what we're here to talk about, or like, hey, that's, their experience, their Black experience. We're not here talking about this other thing, and try to help to refocus. Because, when people, it's difficult to have conversations and address anti-Blackness is, especially if we're talking about, addressing issues and stereotypes about, Native people, Native country. It's difficult sometimes if you're not from that. Like, I have that to say, like, hey, you shouldn't be talking about that. You don't know what you're talking about. But I ask you to have some courage and be brave to step out there if you feel it's safe enough to call out the BS. That's all I'm saying, like, call out BS. It's like in DV and essay, until we like call it out and say, like, hey, that's not welcome here in a community, then people are going to still think that's okay and believe some of that stuff. But it's not always true. What else am I going to say?
Nana, can I ask you to talk about something else that we've heard on these panels? And I just want to hear it from your perspective, especially as a First Nation Nigerian here in the US. We've had discussions previously about colorism, lookism. I think it was Sister Comfort who shared last time about being from Zimbabwe, being African, coming here and learning that she was Black, her whole becoming Black experience. And just wondering, like, from some of our conversations between you and myself, just about that in general, what it means in terms of that, the identity, relating to that identity here in the US. And maybe can you talk about some of the impacts of that as well?
Sure. I briefly talked about that after Comfort had shared that. And I remember that I think Artika had mentioned about light skin privilege too. Mentioned that. But for me, Vivian, you weren't on the last call, but my name is Nigerian. My dad came over here. I'm first generation Nigerian. And my mother is American, and African American. So the whole concept of Black for me is, well, I guess I go back to say, it was funny when I was younger, my brother and I would say we're African American, because to say for both sides, like my mother's African American and then my dad's African. But while growing up, we had people that tried to put us in boxes. We like to do that. Like, I studied psychology, like the way our brains work, we like to categorize stuff, so it helps us. But that also helps perpetuate stupid racism and prejudice too. And so we got to reshuffle some of that categorizing. But in the African American community, sometimes they would like push us aside and be like, well, you're not really African. Like, they wouldn't say African American. They're like, you're not really Black, you're African. It's like, how does that work? Right? like, okay, okay. You say that this is when I started at public school and junior high. When I was in elementary school, I went to a private school, and there's so much diversity there. So we were just like, hey, we're kids. In junior high, it's like smack you in the face. So you're not really Black, you're African. And my brother's name is Charles. So, and my dad's name is Charles, and people are like, well, where's your dad's not really Nigerian, where's his name? I'm like, I don't know, his name's Charles. So, but like, I felt like for me, people see it's more evident with my name, but my brother still got hit with that he was like not backing down with his teammates, and he played football, and he's like, yeah, I'm African, I'm Nigerian, so what? And they would kind of tease him and would say, so, but then he turned it around and somebody said, are you like a prince or something? He said, yeah. So those silly people thought that he was a prince, and then they come to me talking to me, oh yeah, your brother is a prince, so like you're a queen, right? And I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. And my brother's the prince of Africa, and I'm the queen, and I'm his sister. That makes sense, sure. And they would sing, some of them would sing the Coming to America song. She's your queen to be, that. Like when they were singing about the, I'm not good at singing like that, but when they were singing with and they were getting married or whatever for the future queen. And I never had watched Coming to America then, so I was like, I don't know what you're doing. Like, this is silly. But having that split identity, still, even going to college, I embraced both sides. Like my mom, she embraced like my dad's culture, visited over there. She wears an attire and all that, but it's just like a difficulty within the Black community. So I want you all to know that. I don't know how that is in Native communities, if y'all have that where it's like the meshing of like, you're not this, but in like in the spectrum of Blackness, I like to say that the spectrum of Blackness and the limited view that some people have of what Blackness is in America. There's a lot of people who are ignorant, even within our own Black community. And going to college, I had people like that were Nigerian, that they just knew that they had my, they saw like heard my name or something like that. They know like that's Nigerian, no, that's Igbo. So they're like, oh, they say my name like my dad says it. And I'm like, hold on, who's that? Who are you? So I started hanging out with them, but then I'm still not a part of them. You're not Nigerian enough. Like, you're still American. Yeah, so having this of like, okay, well, that's why my brother said we're African American or Nigerian, African American, like a mix of both. And then also, like on my mom's side, is mixing of stuff, which happens in different communities, an African American community because of slavery. My mom, like my great grandma, she had white skin, so we don't really know what, like, was she biracial, to what extent. We know, like, was she fully white, but if she married a Black man, she had to say she was Black or else he was going to get killed. So, and then my grandfather, my mom's dad, like his eyes real slanted, so when he was in World War II, they had to make sure he and his brother had stuff that fully identified them to make sure that he was American. Because the way like his lighter skin, his eyes were slanted, they're like, oh, that they're not like part Asian. So my mom's family is a whole mix of stuff. My grandmother, her mother is half Native American from Florida, but then we don't know like the whole thing of like which tribe, and not just like who was saying, was it last week about the sister was talking about, you know, the identifying like as Native versus Black, right? So we don't really know like what what that looks like. So just, you know, we're African American mix, whatever. You have people that have red hair on my mom's side of the family, long red hair, very pale skin. And then my dad, he's Nigerian, but we know that my dad's mother is biracial. And she's half Nigerian and half Portuguese. My grandmother was raped by a Portuguese sailor. So we know that. And so it's like a mix of stuff. So then when people like see me, like I'm a lighter skinned Black woman, but I identify as Black, but then you have people that try to segment me, and I'm like, no, I am who I am. It doesn't, like, I'm a combination of all like my ancestors, and I'm just Nana. Like, that's who it is. And people have the right, as in Angelica was saying, to have these different identities, and who are you to judge? But there is some judgment within the spectrum of Blackness on what it is. And even, I think I was telling you, Samaya, going to my father's homeland, and they have a different hierarchy about stuff. When I was just there in September and October of last year, that people have in Nigeria, I can't say for the whole continent of Africa, but in Nigeria, they value the lighter skin more. And like, to me, it's a shame to think, because it's an association of whiteness that they still have there due to colonization. But and with the different tribes, they'll try to associate you like, okay, this tribe has more value than this because of whatever. Some tribes may have features that look more European or whatnot, they might say. So that's just, again, to show like the different spectrum of Blackness and what it is for those lived experiences. So when I love to be in spaces where there's Black people that have different experiences in different spaces. And I want to share this before I go, Samaya. I have a play cousin, you know, we have play cousins, that her father is from Guyana in South America. Now, I don't know if anybody's met any Guyanese. I love their food, so amazing. And he married an African-American woman, but then people think of like Central America, South America as a certain thing, and sometimes don't think about, they're like, oh yeah, Brazil, they have Black people. I'm like, yeah, but my uncle, he's from Guyana. Where is that? Is that in the Caribbean? Like, no, South America. Like there's Black people there too. And what is their experience as well as like Black identified? But I'm just gonna close out on that, Samaya. Hope that gave a good perspective.
Yes, thank you, Nana. Thank you so much for sharing, and especially around the experience of colorism in Africa. That says a lot in terms of colonization and beginnings of colonization. And I definitely want us to be able to make those ties and those connections around that. Thank you so much for sharing all of your experience, and also to the sharing about the experience of sexual assault and how you turned that around and kept your power and maintained who you are and your healing process. Definitely want to give appreciation and honor to you for that. Thank you so much. So Miss Vivian, if you will share whatever you want to share with us about yourself, introduce yourself and tell us your wisdom, and we appreciate you for your offering.
Thank you. Thank you, Samaya, Sister Samaya. Thank you, Nina, for what you have disclosed, shared with us. I am humbled to be here today. Thank you for the invitation, Samaya. My name is Vivian Sangis. That's my birth name. I married Schweizer, so I carry it too. And when you see either of those names written down, you like, where, what? And that's part of who I am. I am quite eclectic, and my work in the area of domestic violence, sexual assault, child abuse, elder abuse, suicide intervention and prevention came, I believe, from being witness to domestic violence in my home, where my father would abuse my mom. I was so young when he left, but the imprint remained. And it was much later in time that I started reflecting on some of those experiences and realized that it was part of my journey to where I was standing at that time. I did not understand, I didn't know some of the terms. I did not know victim survivor, victim advocate, surviving advocate. I didn't know those terms. But as I gained an opportunity to, after graduate school, which, I could go on and on about how challenging that was to attain a graduate degree. But as a single mom of two, working full-time and running a business, I was about to get that education because I realized that it was a key towards expanding my horizon and making softer places for my family members to land. And so I represent the Caribbean because all my relatives are of the Caribbean, from the Caribbean islands. I guess had the privilege, when my parents migrated from St. Lucia in the West Indies, or the West Indies Caribbean, to the territory of the US Virgin Islands, where I was born and raised. Now, being on an island which is considered paradise by some, but not by all. And in the background, I have chosen, since hearing a little bit from Nina, I've chosen to put up the fabric that has now become a symbol very recently to members of the US Virgin Islands. The colors in it represent our sun, our sea, our land, the coral of our conch shell, and it's all blended in there. Now, the Madras fabric that you see in the background is its coloring is our own. We have chosen those colors, we have chosen that pattern. But Madras is not ours. Madras is Indian. And for some reason, and I don't know the background, they said it's Indian, but I've seen recently some information where it was, there were photos of, persons in Africa wearing Madras as well. So it has come to symbolize folkism in the Caribbean. And so we wear it during festivities, cultural occasions, and some of us dare to wear it in a professional setting, right? Some of us, we tie our heads with it, or we say we crown our heads with it. So you might see that. And I just chose to throw that up because it's a part of who I am. It helps to identify the part of the world that I'm from, but mostly to people who are familiar with it. I mean, it doesn't scream anything else to persons who are not familiar with it. Okay, so my parents migrate from the French, my battery is running low. What's going on? Give me a second. I'm working through two computers here and did not realize that this one needed more attention than I was giving it. Give me a quick second, I'm sorry.
No worries. Take your
Unexpected.
time.
Unexpected.
Okay.
All right, I am almost there.
Thanks for sharing the fabric too. It's beautiful. I
Yeah,
think I've
thank
seen
you.
that on Facebook before.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Mhm.
So being raised in the US Virgin Islands, I was raised to understand that I was American. I was raised to understand that I was Black. I was raised to understand that I was a Virgin Islander. I was also raised to understand that I was St. Lucian, which because my parents are from the island of St. Lucia. I was raised to understand that I could get things done, that I could accomplish whatever I wanted to. I wasn't raised to understand the limitations that were right there in front of me. The barriers that were there were just not discussed in my home. They were not used to reduce any of my efforts. However, I was also exposed to colorism. That word I don't think existed at that time in the late 60s when I was born. In my family, we were all dark-skinned people, darker skinned people. I had a relative who was really fair skinned, and she seemed to enjoy that, right? When I say enjoy that, it seemed to be a privilege for her. And even if it wasn't, in my mind, it was. Why? Because I was also culturalized to understand that white was better and fairer skinned had doors that were opened wider to them than darker skinned. Now that I knew from very early. Our islands was very close to the island of Puerto Rico. And I remember my mom describing an application that she had to fill out at a clinic on the island. And there was a female that was fair-skinned. And when she was asked to check off the boxes, she checked off blanco. And I remember my mom holding on to blanco as one of her Spanish words. She knew that word. And the woman was adamant that she was blanco. And I thought that she was kind of in between, right? Based on the complexion my mom described, she was in between. She was fair-skinned, but she identified as white. Now, the wider community probably didn't identify her as white by looking at her, but in her, she was raised to understand that she was white. All right. Now, in places like Puerto Rico and a lot of other places, again, just like where I was born and raised, where the majority were dark-skinned people, it was still viewed that if you were fairer skinned, the doors opened wider for you. You had a better chance at being successful in life and all of that. So when I finished high school, I moved to the United States proper. And there, now I didn't fit in. I didn't fit in. I was Black. I was still Black, but I definitely wasn't African American, at least according to the African Americans. I wasn't that. I learned that I wasn't really American because I couldn't vote. But see, I turned the age of 18 6 days before I moved to the United States. And I didn't know that folks in the territory could not vote for the United States president, although they were citizens of the United States. So had I remained in the Virgin Islands, I could not have voted. But once I moved and got onto the continent, then I could vote. So am I American? Am I a US citizen? Am I a Virgin Islander? Am I a woman from the Caribbean? Am I St. Lucian? Because both my parents are St. Lucian. But the one thing I knew, no hesitation, is that I was Black. And whatever that meant applied to me first, before anything else. It could mean that the doors were not open for me at all because I was Black. Another thing is that I couldn't change is I was female, I was woman. And there are some doors that are just a little closed, a little tighter because you are a woman. So I'm woman, Can't change that. Oh, maybe I could, but choose not to change that. And I'm Black. Choose not to change that, won't change that, can't change that really. There are features that I carry that says Black. My nose says Black. My forehead says Black. My cheekbones say Black. My thick lips say Black. So there's a lot that I would have to do to try to be anything else. Pride in that, I've kept pride in that. Despite the challenges, despite what I see going on around the world, I am the mother of 2 adult sons, Black sons. Their dad is African-American with some Native American in his background that I don't know a whole lot about, but I encourage my children to do the digging because it connects them to their past. And so my children don't have a, I don't think they're excluded from the Black sphere, right? Because they're Black enough. They're African-American. They're viewed as African-American. The Afro-Caribbean part of them just kind of gets dormant when they're among their peers, I believe. But when they're with their family, they connect, they admire, they represent the Caribbean when given the opportunity. In my work, as I transition to being who I am today, or what I am today professionally, most of my work in responding to victims of crime or preventive work was in the Caribbean. So I moved back to the Caribbean, and because I felt it was time to give to my people in the Caribbean what I had been given to folks on the mainland USA. And while there, I had the privilege, the honor of leading a dual organization, and also chairing for a good many years a dual coalition as well, and had the opportunity to bring in programs and supports that were needed to include suicide intervention and prevention when during 2011, there was an uptick, a strange uptick of Caribbean folks committing suicide, which is not, prior to that, we do a lot of things, but the one thing we didn't do much of is we didn't take our lives. In our history, yes. In our history, to avoid capture, to avoid further slavery, we would make those choices as a people. But in the latter years, that was not necessarily a solution. We saw as a solution. But in 2011, we had an uptick, and so I trained my staff, or got some training on supporting especially victims of sexual assault, domestic violence, intimate partner violence, who were on the edge or considering suicide, namely because they were ashamed and because they were not being believed. We would hear from the family members how they choose to deal with that. Please write down your questions. Okay, that wasn't for me. All right. In terms of working with Native peoples, we have Native peoples. They're not identified as tribes. We don't, tribes that are recognized by the United States. We have that, we are not even recognized as persons in the Caribbean, natives or birthed on the US owned territory. We're not recognized enough to be able to be considered US. We're considered US citizens, but we're not considered American or something like that. Namely because one of the rights that Americans have or US citizens have, which is to vote for the president of the United States, we don't get that opportunity. All right. Is it strategic? It's quite strategic to have territories of the United States where the residents, large in numbers, primarily minority people do not get to cast a vote for the United States president. So let that sink in for a minute as to how that shapes the numbers of persons who can and cannot vote. So when I hear about voting suppression, I'm thinking, hey, if you just address the territories and the situations that we find ourselves in, you'll open up a lot of voting. And that's probably strategically done to where that's not happening. But I digress, because that's not what we're talking about. It's all part of it, but it's not what we're talking about today. But there are some natives, Tainos, the Tainos. We have had the Carib, we have had the Arawak persons, and in terms of working in this arena, in doing the work, I can't say that I have identified or worked with, when I was doing direct services, or my staff was doing direct services, with persons who identify as Native American. So can't say I have specific experience in that area. I don't know if there's anything else I can share. If I'll be happy to answer questions.
Can you unpack that box a little bit more about the strategy of the territories, which is primarily Black and brown people, if I'm not mistaken?
Oh, you're correct.
Okay, and where, you know, white folks who are there, and the capitalism, you know what I mean? And then what is that strategy for not granting, like what you said, citizenship of the US, because it's like mainland and then territories? What is that strategy? Can you unpack that a little bit? Because it is about Black and brown people. So what is that?
Well, I can't say that I can name the strategy. I just see that it's quite strategic that you would own several territories, 6, 7 of them. You have Guam, you have the American Samoa, you have Puerto Rico, you have the United States Virgin Islands. There is also the British Virgin Islands that's still under it's an independent. It's a kind of unique actually situation because they spend US currency. They use US currency in the British Virgin Islands, but they're not related to the United States. They're not, owned by or anything to the United States. They're still under the Queen of England, but they use US currency. So I don't know, there must be something going on there that I don't know a lot about. But when you have 6 or so territories that belong to the United States, there are military posts on those islands. There are, a lot of things happening on the ground, but none of the residents can vote for the United States president. I don't know the population combined, but they're all Black and brown people, majority. So that's a lot of Black and brown votes that you don't have to worry about counting. And yes, I see it as a strategy. I don't know what the strategy is called. I don't know if that will ever change. There's been some advocacy over the years for that to happen. The United States Virgin Islands was sold from Denmark, by Denmark, well, the forced sale to the United States of America. It was a forced sale. It was, we're going to give you this amount of money in gold for these islands, or we're going to take them. And if I'm not wrong on my history, I'm getting a little older now, $2.5 million in gold, or we're going to take these islands. And so the residents didn't have any choice in the matter. The island and everything was sold to the United States. That was in 1917. And it was about, boy, I have a friend, Olasi Davis. He's a geologist and a historian. He would scratch his head if I got this wrong,
Mhm.
but I'm gonna try. It was about 10 years later that there was advocacy for the residents of the US Virgin Islands to gain citizenship. And it wasn't advocacy from the islanders. It was advocacy from persons who had visited, white Americans who had come to the island and said, wait a minute, what do you mean you're not United States citizens? No, we're not. The territory was purchased, but we're just here. We just here. There's, they pull down the Danish flag and they put up the United States flag, and that's all we know. And there was advocacy for the citizenship, which was granted about 10 years later. But with the US citizenship, still did not come the right to vote for presidency. And it's still that way today.
Okay. That's a point. I really would like to meet the brother, what's his name?
Olasi Davis?
Olasi Davis.
Did you not meet him when you were down in St. Thomas, St. Croix?
We didn't get a chance. We didn't get a chance to meet because he was busy. But I still would like to meet with him because it's definitely about the baobab tree, right?
There's a lot. There's a lot that he can share with you. Oh my goodness. He is quite the walking historian. But yeah, again, I digress.
Okay.
But yeah, so it puts us in a place of fitting in where we know we belong, despite the challenges, right? And we belong in this world. We belong in the diaspora of Black and Blackness. And we belong with you.
Yes. Yes.
I belong with you.
We need to sit with that for a minute. I belong, and I belong with you. Let's remember that piece, Rebecca. I'm doing a sidebar with Rebecca real quick, but let's go back when we're doing our extrapolating to use that I belong and I belong with you. Make that something that we really feature. Also, too, in terms of the connection around voting, that's the reason I wanted you to go ahead and really expound on that, is because there's issues around, if I'm correct in my history lessons, that there were issues around Black people getting the right to vote before Natives. So there's that too, and pulling in those connections. All of those things have a lot to do with this, Black hateration and how we come up with all of these belief systems around who belongs and who matters and who has value. And as Sister Nana was saying about the Oppression Olympics. So it feels like to me, as we are having these conversations, we're learning about so many current experiences that have to do with what has happened historically, how that originated. And those are the places we want to say prayers over and to heal, so that as we're moving forward, you can't argue with facts. Well, you can, but we want to put the facts out there about, well, hey, this is, why you think that? This is why you think that. This is where, one of the originations of this particular belief. And so now that you have new information and you have these connections, I want you to think about, why do you believe that? Because I think that is a good place of disruption, that when we hear people say certain things in our families, I know in my family for sure, I'm like, oh, do you really believe that? Why do you believe that? Mm-hmm. And let me tell you this, so you can add that to how you come to your belief about that. Now, if you want to continue with that belief, that's fine. But this is a place for you to be educated and then see what you can do with that. You know, have that kind of conversation, because in our families, in our organizations, in our communities, we have all these various and sundry belief systems that are so antiquated as we are moving toward a new planetary norm, especially based on the pandemics that we're all collectively experiencing. So all peace and light on that. Just had to get that in there. So want to open the floor now so that, you know, we open up the conversation to have questions for Sister Nana and Sister Vivian, to see how we can further dispel myths and stereotypes and beliefs, or if you just want to ask some questions to for them to further clarify some of the things that they've offered today. And to both of you, thank you so much for your offering. Really appreciate you.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much. I just had a few thoughts, and in the beginning, or our first ever session, you know, you asked us, Samaya, about like things we wanted to get out of, you know, our time together, and then I had mentioned, you know, like how do I have conversations around anti-Blackness in my family? Not that those conversations really come up, but there's, you know, like times where, you know, like let's say someone said something inappropriate, and it's like, you know, how do you shift their way of thinking in a way that, you know, is not going to cause more harm? Because but either way, like, why am I caring about someone's feeling when they've just caused harm to so many other people, including you know, my family members who are, you know, part Black or half Black. But I don't know. And what you just said, Samaya, like about questioning and like saying like, oh, interesting, you know, interesting that you feel that way. Tell me a little bit more. That's like just thinking about how to redirect that and have them kind of like explain themselves and kind of make a fool out of themselves. I don't know. I was thinking about that, and like having someone like really like think about you know, why they said those things, or I don't know, just reflection, bouncing it back or giving them a time to reflect instead of being like, hey, I was really fucked up, or like, you know. So I really like that. I appreciate that. And then also with what Nina, you said with like, you know, the Oppression Olympics, and also Vivian as well, and how that even plays into our own families, like not even, you know, other mixed identities and other people who have, you know, other ethnicities or other come from different nations, but how we talk about that with our own family members, whether you're darker, you know, have like a darker complexion, or you're more fair skinned or something like that. And so I was just thinking about that, and I don't know, I'm really appreciative of this this time with you all and getting to hear your experience. And it's so crazy how we are all, you know, come from different you know, mixed identities, and but how we're so similar. It's so crazy. And then how we're so divided, and that we are, it's not by accident that we're divided, right? But how do we come together to share the commonalities, share the hurt, share the pain, and then bring it forth like, hey, we're gonna stick with the, you know, like, how do I explain it? Stand in our pain, but we're gonna stand together. So I love you guys. So I just want to say that. I'm over here on my floor doing some stretches while I'm listening, so I'm all awkward, not trying to show my camera, but I'm here listening and very grateful.
Good idea. That's a good idea to be stretching and doing some kind of relaxation while having these conversations. can appreciate that. We love you too, Angelica, for sure. Miss you when you're not here. Absolutely. And thank you for sharing that, because it reminded me of, I'm going to put this resource in the chat. I'm trying to do two things at once, but I ran across this YouTube of a professor at University of Pennsylvania. And she is, I mean, she has this country of Brazil, because, okay, because I'm doing two things. She has this presentation that she does about the evolution of skin color, and it is one of the best I've ever seen and heard. So I'm trying to put that in the chat. And if you all get a chance to listen to it, I mean, it would be very informational. There it is. Okay, so I put the link in the chat, and it's pretty long, but it's worth listening to. She really gives a lot of history. And on top of that, she has, she and some of her colleagues have written a book to teach children about the evolution of skin color, and also about being valued as a human being. So if you, I think that would be a good resource to have. If you get a chance to take a look at that, it would be great. I used it in a training not too long ago, last year. And some of the academicians in the room had issues with it. But I mean, this woman is a anthropologist. She is a professor at the University of Pennsylvania. And so, I let the academicians have their, warring conversations about data, but in other words, it's worthy of listening to, especially as it pertains to the work that we're doing. So, any other comments, questions, sharing, offering?
I wanted to, when Angelica spoke about almost surprised. I know you're not surprised, Angelica, but I'm just going to use that word, that we have so much in common. It's not by accident that we do, but that we were either raised or culturalized to believe that we didn't. And here we are in the last maybe decade, realizing how much we have in common, how much we can relate to each other. Whoever set it up that we didn't, I'm sure they're quite disappointed, but I'm quite pleased that we are figuring it out.
Yes. Yes. On the setup.
On the setup.
Okay. Especially after, slavery became very economically beneficial for a few.
Mm-hmm.
You can look at the, I think it's called the Willie Lynch story. Have you all heard of this? It's if all you gotta do, let me do it real quick, because I know we need to close, but resources are very important to have. The Willie Lynch letter. If you Google it, it will come up. It's a book, it's a PDF, there are quotes, there's all kind of stuff, but it's Willie and last name Lynch, Lynch. Yeah, Willie Lynch letter. And it talks about the term you used, Vivian, the setup. It was like, he was saying, if we could do this particular thing for 400 years with Black people as property, we would have what we have now. And so there's always been this controversy about, is this real, or is it, or is it just a myth? Whatever it is, it worked. It
Yep.
worked. And it has brought us to this place where we are today having this conversation. So as we're having these conversations, and we've gone to some very tough places and probably will go to even tougher places. So it is very important for us to do what Angelica is doing, to, stretch, to have your ancestral items available, doing your prayers, doing whatever you need to do to, be able to listen and be grounded. That's fine, because this stuff is hard, but also too, at the same time, we're doing prayers. We're actively using our hearts, our minds, our bodies to do prayers to heal this stuff, because we have children, and our children are going to have children, and their children are going to have children. And if we don't break this, it's going to continue. So we have, committed, and I'm saying this for the sake of Miss Vivian, because we already know this in this space, but we have committed to visiting these hard places, and to hearing, and to sharing, and to healing this stuff in the best way we know how at this particular time on our individual and collective spiritual journey. And so, Miss Linda always closes us with
Nana.
prayers.
I think Nana, you're
Can I
muted.
share one thing before Ms. Linda
Sure.
closes?
Sure.
You kind of touched on that, so our spirits probably connected on that. I was just wanted to share what I heard from Angelica and then Vivian, something that would ring loud and clear. If we want to have these conversations with people in our community or families, so they're going to be courageous conversations, because it's going to be, difficult, but, if we're willing to go into it, not thinking it as a confrontation, right? I think if at least one party, if you go in there thinking it's not going to be a confrontation, so it loses some of that power, and just say, hey, we're having this dialogue back and forth, and just posing those questions so they can think mindfully and give them space, that helps. But a part of it, we have to go beyond where I heard the hurt. Like, there is hurting. A lot of people on different sides, there's hurting, but we have to, like, instead of just staying in the hurt, you have to go towards that healing. Because if you're still there in that hurt, and then we're like scratching the little scab and it hasn't healed, it's going to leave that mark. So once we take, we have to go beyond that hurt to a healing stage, so that we're open, and to recognize that some people are still stuck in that hurt, and be like, okay, you have a lot of hurt on this, and that not to push too much, because sometimes if we push too much, it's going to go over their heads. So I think, like, for me personally, I had to go, like, to understand that when I'm in a space of hurt, it could be a trigger. And how I said before, to take those, I took the bullets out, my finger is off the trigger anyway, so it's not going to do it as much harm unless I hit myself up against the head with it. But when I'm in that hurt phase, I'm like, gotta still myself to be quiet and be honest with somebody. I feel like, hey, I'm trying to take in as much as I can. Or sharing that, like, I understand that you might be trying to take in as much as you can. And this can be a longer conversation than now, but I'm willing and open to having this. And that's like the work that you're going to be doing with yourself while doing this too. Because it's a learning thing for us, and healing. So I work with survivors. I say it's a healing journey. It's just like, I'm healed. Because sometimes you can't get that miraculous, I'm healed, on your body, but if your mind isn't there too, because I've seen it, like, people have surgeries and then they didn't trust their body. So you got to have that. So I just wanted to share that with you all. That was on my spirit to share.
Thank
Yes.
you.
Thank you so much for that. But before we go any further, I wanted to acknowledge that Cinnamon did have her hand raised, so I just want to check in if Cinnamon wanted to share. Thank you, Nina.
Thank you, Rebecca. Angelica kind of addressed it, but one, I want to say thank you so much, Nina and Vivian. And during this time, as you're talking, I'm very much relating it to my world and to, what my experience is and has been, and my family and relatives. So, so I appreciate it. And the one thing, Nina, you had talked about was going into rural areas. And it feels like deaf ears, that you're walking into deaf ears. And I agree with you. I also know one of the things that I have thought about over the years with this is when you're in rural areas and rural reservation, your experiences, your access, which is all changing now with the internet, but your access to education, what it used to be, and knowledge was so limited. And I remember I grew up I'm very much in a rural area now, but I grew up in a rural area next to the reservation. And just my experiences when I was younger, and now seeing and recalling some of my classmates and their prejudice against Indian people was pretty severe. And African American and Black people and people of color, period, was pretty extreme. And yeah, so I was just, as you were talking about that, it's like I recall that very, very much. And I think it's still true to this day. Even when I was working on shelter, at the shelter, on a reservation, as an advocate, I realized I was also involved in MIWSAC, at the time. So I had that access to additional information and education as well. But excuse me, my colleagues didn't have access to all of that. So I would share everything I could with them, but I realized, because you're busy and you're in that shelter, and it's pretty much all hands on deck because we were limited staff as well and doing those direct services. So it's a little bit different, shelter, working in shelter and in a crisis center, I think. But either way, that access to information, I would have never had it if I didn't have MIWSAC. And when I met the elders pulling together MIWSAC in the beginning, it was so, I'm like, wow, there's support out there. And I didn't know, I felt like I was this tiny little ant in this big world, and so, yeah, I just want to say thank you. And I appreciate your time and everything you're sharing. So thank you. The one other thing I was thinking of was the equity piece. And that access was a piece of that equity, very much so, because I had everything I did with MIWSAC, I did on my own time. Our executive director was a person not of color. Even though we held the grant, we held the funding to serve the reservation for sex assault survivors. So, you know, that was an intentional barrier, I believe. But yeah, so thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Cinnamon. Anyone else want to share, ask questions?
This is Rebecca. I just want to say there's so much gratitude for the sharing and the education. I'm a bit of a nerd, so I read a lot of books. I've read A House on Sugar Beach, which really expanded my mind on what we know in America and what we don't know about territories and the journey back and forth to the African continent and back, and what Liberia means and what it meant to like there's so many intersections. So I really appreciate hearing about the Islander experience and being African descent in our country, being that hybrid love story. And then the last thing I want to close with is it's such a beautiful reminder that even though we're in our own communities and our own nations, we really have so many similarities, so many. And that's the oppression, the historical trauma, the healing, and then our intersections trying to do this work together. So it was really beautiful. And I'm just really grateful for all I learned today. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. As a reader or a wannabe reader, I'd love to see your collection of books. I'm more of a collector of books now than I am a reader, but I would love to see your collection of books, Rebecca. Thank you for sharing that.
I can identify, Vivian. I've got this whole shelf of books I'm going to read while I'm in retirement, so I get it. Like,
oh, you know what? I could call my books that, my retirement books. Okay.
Yes, yes. In retirement, I'll be reading books. You call me and you say, "What are you doing?" "Oh, I'm reading the books that I collected over all these years." So
Yes, yes.
absolutely looking forward to it. Anyone else want to be respectful of everyone's voice? Thank you so much, everyone, for your presence today. It's so powerful to be on these calls every week. As we, it's someone trying to chat. It's someone, because I don't want to talk over anyone. Okay. Yeah, so before we close real quick, a little bit of housekeeping. We have, I think, one more listening panel to do next week. I'm waiting on the confirmation from the guest. And then after that, what I think we're going to do, Naina and I are going to continue planning and talking about what's next. But for us to have our collective MIWSAC and STW Share Time Wisely debrief, so that we can just spend some time sharing about our experience with all of this new knowledge and information that we've gained, and to honor, to honor this time and honor those who have brought us offerings. I think that is a must, and that it will be healing for us together. And then after that, we're going to dig in strongly in the month of March to start pulling all the information together and coming out at the end with our, I want to say our baby, our, like our little whoever, whatever this is that's forming inside the womb of all of our collective womb. I want to use that language because that is precious language. I remember coming through a time in the movement when women talking about birthing experiences was like, we don't want to talk about that. That wasn't empowering. And I thought that was really crazy. I never understood that. When birthing is one of the most powerful things there is in the planet because we're bringing forth life. So it's, decolonizing our minds of all of that stuff that I don't know where it came from. And I didn't buy into it. I put that on the shelf for me to deal with when I'm in retirement. So, it all wraps back around. But thank you so much for your presence. And Linda, we're gonna come back to you again today if she's there for our last words. There's Linda. Thank you, Linda.
Hi, thank you very much. I'm writing to Vivian. I would like to get your address as we've been trying to maintain our values in gifting somebody when they are spending their time and their energy, their wisdom and their life experiences with us. There are some things that we have that we would like to send to you, if that's okay. So I'm sitting here trying to type with one hand.
You don't have to type. I'll go ahead and send you the address. Thank you.
Thank you. So I do have some medicine. I'll tell you, I'm in North Dakota, and that's a powerful place for me. The last few days have been really, really hard on my soul and on who I am and all of the things that I am trying to be daily, and it is a practice. So I was sitting here thinking of the things I learned when I came to North Dakota. I'm really, I was raised in the city, and I've never lived on a reservation ever. And it is a whole different way to live. And I thought with my superior mentality or whatever the heck I thought I was, that I was going to come here and help, however I could on the reservation with whatever things I learned. But what I did learn more about was about the values that are supposed to be ours that were erased for many, almost everybody on this call, that I know of. And that sometimes we simply don't know who we are, or we forget. And it benefits somebody when that's happening, but it's not us. I also wanted to talk about for a second that the shame that makes us silent, it is not inherited. It is set up. The dynamics are powerful to keep us silent and to keep us separated. And I know I understand that today and all of these days is really watching and listening and experiencing other people's lives and what has happened. I am an expert on my own life. I could tell you about it. I don't understand other people's and their experiences and what a narrow view that is when there's so much in the world that makes it rich. So I came here to the people, and they're not, I'm Anishinaabe and they're Dakota, and they welcome me in their community, and historically we're enemies. The people, there's wars written about and all this. A couple people said that, but what they really taught me was about how to love, because I guess I just didn't know that. And my family couldn't teach me because they were too sick from what all happened. And that's not any one person's fault or it's the setup. So I am empowered and hopeful in everything that we're sharing, that the circle gets wider and it is more intact than ever. And it's not about dividing or pointing. It's about being together in a way, and not just about my experiences and my narrow view, but it's what happened. And so also the patience for those who have been so hurt and traumatized that they can't see beyond that pain. And it's not for us to say that, but just to observe it and to listen. And I loved what you said when you said, if you're in so much pain, you're not able to help somebody without healing. And we need to focus on that. And it's not going to be a one-step process. It's continuous and it's over and over because of the way it's set up. It's intentional and the opportunities will present themselves. If you take them, it's good. If you don't take them, it's good. It'll come back again. So thank you for everything you've shared. And I said this before, but I was kidding, but I wrote to my girls this morning and I said, remember, God lives over here. So I'm over here visiting. Because this is where I learned it's real. The spiritual realm is real. And we are as much a part of it in this circle as we ever were before we got here. We are a part of that. That whole essence is here with us, holding us together lightly with love that we can't see and sometimes can't feel, but it exists from our ancestors all the way to our future great-great-grandchildren. And I'm proud and happy to share this time with you. So I've got these 2 medicines and I'm in a hotel, so I can't light nothing because I know that they'll kick me out and fine me $250. I'll go outside and let the air take away all of my words in this medicine, in the smoke, to a place where the pain cannot harm anybody anymore. So thank you so much. Grandfather, grandmother, universe, however we call you, I ask that you help all of us to quietly take a moment of time to breathe and to be and accept and acknowledge your presence with us. Thank you as we exercise our minds, our spirits, our hearts, our capacity to hear other people. Thank you for the gift you gave us in this day and every day before, even the bad ones, for they help to get us to where we're at this very moment. Our time is really limited here. Our time is limited together. Help us to make the best use of our time so that we can be in better community with each other, be better examples of how to be good relatives to not just our biological family, but to the world. And I know as the world pushes against us, that your foundation inside of us and what has been given to us will help us to get back up every time we fall down. I ask that where there's hurt in this virtual circle, that you bring relief to that pain. We have some of our staff that is in pain today and in grief and in extreme fear for sicknesses that are floating around on the world. We ask for calm and peace and love to surround those people. We ask that you be with our sisters and our brothers. Some of us have problems with the men in our lives. I ask that you help us to heal those things and help our men to do their healing too. Help us to remember that if we have problems with men, that we need to fix that before we influence our sons and our grandsons. I ask that you help us to do our very best today and to be honest. I know those were the 2 requirements I heard from the spiritual realm, was to just do your best and tell the truth. Thank you for the gift of time with the women that are on this call. I ask that you hear us and you accept our offerings as a gift of our love and our time together. Watch over us as we go back into our lives. Some of us will be debriefing and some will go about their orders of business. I ask that you help to keep us planted firmly in humility and honesty and love. and most of all, help us to do no more harm to anybody or anything. I ask these things for all of my relations. Thank you for your time.
Talk, yes, say, thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Have a good day, everyone.
Very well.
Are you debriefing or no?
I think so. I think the team will, yeah.
Can we take like a 10-minute break? Because I got to go burn this medicine.
Yep, yep, perfect.
Thank you.
I think Linda should just take the fine. I don't know why she doesn't want to do that, but